First of all, good evening everyone. I hope you're all having a nice time. So today I'm going to talk about bug bounties, like starting from its history and how much it grew over the time. And I think you guys are going to like it. So I'll basically start by the default, who am I? I work as a senior application security engineer, or mostly known as the triager of programs. I work at Bugcrowd, the #1 crowdsourced security testing platform, which connects the researchers to programs. And I used to do, and sometimes still do, bug bounties in my free time. And there's also a fun fact that my first bug bounty reward was from Offensive Security. In case if you don't know, the Offensive Security is the company that issues the OSCP and OSCE, the most globally known certificates in the IT security. And it was a day before my 15th birthday, so it was the best surprise for me. And aside from work stuff, I also like hiking and exploring new places, and I like techno music and festivals. So I'm also known as Edis the octopus in bug bounty area, because there was a researcher that reported a couple of submissions in different programs, and coincidentally I was the ASC assigned to those programs, and he was like, is this guy the only employee at Bugcrowd? Because he would see me in all submissions. And I'm also known as Edis the Lord of Duplicates, because I get to duplicate lots of submissions. So the next, this slide is basically about an introduction to the concept of a bug bounty. We will start from 1995, the first launched bug bounty program, and we will outline the benefits and potential cons of running a bug bounty program, and I'll share some tips and suggestions to the bug hunters. So let's get started with the history of bug bounties. In 1995, the Netscape launched the first Bugs Bounty program. And it was really nice because back in the day, in 1995, literally no company ever mentioned something named Bugs Bounty. That was because the people were very afraid of having other people testing their application. And the Netscape was the first company that actually allowed the users to test their application. And you can see that Eric Schmidt, the CTO of the Sun, said that we are glad to support Netscape in this bounty program, because the Java code that they launched was a pre-version, so it by default had some bugs. So starting from Netscape in 1995, in this slide we can see that over the time, in the following years, more and more companies have adopted the bug bounty model. We can see in 2010, Google launched their own bug bounty program, which is still managed to the date. And there's also a fact that until 2019, they have paid over $15 million in bug bounties to researchers around the world. And you can see that in 2011, Facebook also started the bug bounty programs, then followed by Bugcrowd, Etsy, and so many other programs. And this is just a small portion of the programs that have adopted the bug bounty model, but trust me, there's so much more programs than this slide. And this is basically what we see lately. There is actually a rapid growth of the bug bounty programs around the industries. It's not only the IT security, it's starting from financial organizations to healthcare, to literally any company that has to do with internet. And the growth that we see makes us very clear that the bug bounty and vulnerability disclosure programs are here to stay. In fact, they're just going to grow and grow, because this is a really effective testing comparing to traditional testing methods like pen testing. We can see in quality that bug bounties actually present significant value when compared to traditional testing methods. And that's because, for example, pen testing is usually done by 2 or 3 people, while in a bug bounty program you could have easily like 50 private researchers, and it's of course that 50 researchers are gonna find more bugs than 2 pen testers. And there's also the fact that in bug bounty program you will pay only for valid submissions, and it is an ongoing program which will have eyes upon the application all the time. And the impact, there has been also a huge increase of critical vulnerabilities found by the bug bounty programs with the help of the security researchers. This is basically an image of how the bug bounties work. This is a managed bug bounty program, which means we as Bugcrowd help the companies to manage, starting from adding the researchers, issuing the payments to the researchers, and literally managing their program from every perspective. Actually, launching a bug bounty program takes way before launching one. You have to plan it carefully, starting from scope to out-of-scope targets to environment and so many more that I'll talk in the next following slides. And basically, a bug bounty program takes serious commitment because it's not easy to run by your own. And that's where the crowdsourced security platforms do help. And we can see in the following slide that these are basically the things that you need to know before starting a bug bounty program. You need to have a clear scope. Scope means basically what the researchers can test and get paid for. So if you define a clear scope, the researchers will follow that and they'll just get paid accordingly. And the focus is basically a certain functionality of the application that you would like to be tested more. For example, it could be payment processing or account settings or literally any functionality that has some value. And exclusions basically stand for the out-of-scope stuff. It can be like the third-party sites or the software that you don't own, such as support sites and many other things. Exclusions stand for the assets that you don't want to be tested. So if the researchers test the exclusions, they're simply not going to get paid. So it basically discourages them from testing exclusions. And this is actually interesting, the organization-wide awareness. So can you imagine if a program would start without informing the sales team or the other departments? Because the researchers usually will try everything to find vulnerabilities, starting from bombarding the contact us forms and literally every stage of application. So if the sales team would see so many contact us forms, and they would be literally freaked out. So this is why the organization-wide awareness must be completely done before launching a program. Literally every team in a company should know that a program will launch. And this is environment. So each one of them has its own benefits. So we can just say some of them. Production, let's assume that you are a huge company like Tesla or Netflix, and you have literally like tons of applications. So it would normally take so much time to do the staging versions of every application that you have. And that's why you can just go with the product version. And there's also an additional benefit of that, because in production, like millions of codes are being constantly pushed to the application. So it means that you get to see the vulnerability in first hand. While there are certain benefits of running the staging version too, because let's assume that the staging version will simply fall over. It wouldn't hurt because there is no sensitive client data or any data that would hurt the company or its brand. And this is the access. So basically, what are you going to give the researchers to access your application? You can do shared credentials, but the researchers don't actually like shared credentials because there can be sometimes some researchers that will change the password and simply lock them out. So we often suggest either giving the option of self-sign-up, which means they can sign up with their own emails, or the other thing could be to provide specific credentials with, like by creating from company side. And the last one is to decide whether if you want to go private or public. We as Bugcrowd generally suggest the new companies that adopt the bug bounty model to start by private, because you have certain researchers that are on your program, and you can simply filter the malicious activity or the bug bounty activity on your logs. And after time by time, you can just prepare to go public or not. Because private is suitable for organizations that haven't tried bug bounty yet, so they can get the concept and how it's being run. While the public has a huge advantage of like having thousands and thousands eyes upon your application, trying to find vulnerabilities. And this is after the launch. So you launch the program, and the program is not going to manage its own. So you need to have huge resources. You need to have people that are constantly taking care of the submissions, and that will fix the submissions. And we can say that the commitment is a huge problem that needs to be solved. And also the crowdsourced security platforms take care of the submissions, starting from duplicating to validating to making sure that the issue is reproducible. And all you have to do is to fix and reward the researcher. And the communication. This is the primary thing I have heard from the researchers in DEF CON, the biggest hacking conference in Vegas. The researchers simply love when their bug is acknowledged simply by saying like, thanks for your report. And they just like being kept up to date on their submission. And communication internally as well as externally is very important to have a successful bug bounty program. And reports. So basically, by the time that you start the bug bounty program, there will be constant reports all the time. And the reports need to be validated as soon as possible to maintain a healthy relationship with the researchers. And this is, the last one is to define a vulnerability rating taxonomy. This is a document that we launched in 2016. Basically, the VRT stands for a document that connects certain vulnerability classes to priorities, starting from P1, which is a critical issues referred to like secure injection, LFI, and issues that have critical impact. And the other priority is P2, which is high, such as stored XSS or certain CSRF vulnerabilities. And the P3 is the moderate, like the reflected XSS, which do have certain impact but is not as critical as a P1 or a P2. And the other one is the P4, the low priority issues, which are good to fix, like they're mostly considered like a missing best practice. And the P5 stands for won't fix or informational. These are good to know, but you're most likely not going to make any changes to that because it doesn't pose any significant security impact. So having a VRT helps to customers as well as to the researchers. If you define a VRT, if you use our model, or you can just completely customize it based on your needs, it can just literally work with your security posture by knowing the certain vulnerability classes and its associated priorities. And the researchers also like the VRT because they, of course, start by focusing on the critical issues first, because they know the higher rewards and the less chances to get a duplicate. So we have done so much talking about the company perspective of bug bounties. So let's get a little bit on the researcher side. So who are the bug hunters? They're simply all over the world. We can see in this picture that the number of countries represented by the crowd is 109 countries. They're simply all over the world and all over the continents. And they have all levels of experience. Some of them are very experienced pen testers who turned out to be bug hunters. Some of them just started to get into security and bug hunting. So it's simply all levels of experience. And they have one thing in common. They're all passionate about the security. And that's what drives them to find more bugs and to enjoy being bug hunters. They're simply also by all ages. There are some researchers that are just teenagers, like me. And they also like to challenge. They find it exciting to find a bug in a like mostly known as a secure target. So they like to challenge it to find some security issues in that. And also the goal is to make the internet more secure. Whoa, what up? It's not yet. Yeah. So these are some tips and suggestions that I have to existing and to the new bug hunters. The first one is read, learn, and practice. This one must be repeated all the time. You need to be simply hungry for learning all new stuff all the time. Because most of the programs are related to web targets, I would suggest starting by reading the Web Application Hacker's Handbook, which clearly has all the information that you will use on a daily basis. Also, sharing is caring. Simply, this term stands for the researchers that love to blog post their vulnerabilities that they find. And it really helps the older new researchers that want to get into bug hunting, so they can simply learn from each other. And the bug hunting community is very well known with helping to each other. And there's also the third one, to check online materials. There are so many tutorials and videos, even some live streams over the Twitch and other platforms that support live stream. For example, the bug bounty hunting methodology version 3 by Jason Addix is a great example for that. He simply starts as how to become a successful researcher, starting from doing reconnaissance and how to find and exploit vulnerabilities. So I would really suggest watching that. And also, if you are a new researcher, you have to be patient because it will take time to find a valid vulnerability. Simply, there are duplicates everywhere, and it's very normal to do some stupid mistakes when you get to this community initially, but over the time, you'll just get better and better. So let's say you got to your first program, either it be public or private, it doesn't matter. So this is basically the approach that you should take. Let's assume that the program has so many targets, starting from the main site. If you're late to the party, it simply doesn't make sense to focus on the main target because it has been already scanned so many times and have been looked so many times. So you have more chances to find some issues in their subdomains than the main domain. Also, the second and most important thing while doing a test is to do recon. Simply scan for everything that you can find that is associated to the organization. You have to find subdomains. You have to check their host and whatever port they are running, preferably non-standard ports because they're often prone to some vulnerabilities. Also, you have to review the services and ports found by recon because simply that means where the vulnerability may be lying. Also, you have to understand how their application works. This is where having experience in programming could help because you could think like a developer and understand what mistakes they have made and try to exploit them to report the issue. Also, you can test for CSRF, like checking if they have a CSRF token or if they have implemented such authentication token to be protected from the CSRF. You simply need to think like a developer and to exploit like a hacker. That's what makes you a successful hunter. Also, if you get stuck at some point, it's perfectly fine to ask for help over the bug bounty community. There are certain Slack channels that there is the bug bounty researcher forum that you can just connect with other hackers, and they're all super friendly, by the way, so they'll just accept anyone. And you will just have so much fun and learn from each other. But again, I would suggest to try all the possibilities before reaching out to anyone else. And also, you got the first submission, so you have to write the report. This is like the most important aspect from my side of view, because I get to see weird reports all the time. So I always suggest the researchers to follow the simple rules. You have to keep the description short and simple. You have to focus on what the vulnerability type is. And you don't have to provide so much theoretical knowledge about the issue, because we see it all the time and probably know it better than you. And also, you have to show the full proof of concept. Like, you have to show what's the potential risk of the issue. You can't simply say that there is a vulnerability, but if you provide an additional POC, like the potential impact, chances are high that you will get a higher bounty, because the company that you have reported the issue will understand the potential impact, and based on that, you'll get the higher reward possible. And also, don't add the video unless it has some good music in the background. I have seen videos that literally have some very weird music, so I would suggest having some nice music. Also, the last, you can provide remediation advice if you want, but this is not mandatory, so it's fully optional to you. Because the clients sometimes like to hear the potential fix from the researcher, and by the time when you keep doing this on a single program, you'll become like their remote security engineer, because you'll build a healthy relationship with them, and you'll just simply enjoy working with a certain client. So, thanks you all for listening to me, and I'm happy to hear any questions that you might have. Yeah, sure.
So when you submit some security bug, do you submit it under your name, or do you use some fake identity?
Yeah, this is a great question. So we would suggest you to submit under your real name, so you can get paid for it. But you also have the option to submit anonymously under some different name, but you can just keep the payment information real, or just prefer to get paid by Bitcoins, if you would like to keep the anonymity. But it's the white hat testing, so there will be no legal problems unless you do some malicious acts. Yeah.
Any advices on how to choose the target? It was already once answered, but I would
how to choose the program or
how
target?
to choose the program, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a good question. So I would actually suggest to choose a program that has many targets, so you can focus on additional targets and not a single target. And also the second advice is to work on the public programs until you build a reputation, so you can get private invites. And by private invites, it means that there is a less competition, and chances are high that you will find a valid bug. Any other? Yes?
What are the statistics with like new bounty programs? When you publish a new program, do
Yes.
like a lot of vulnerabilities found like right away, or does it like take time before
Yeah, that's a good question. So given a larger scope of a program, we literally had no programs that didn't receive any submissions. We have some stats that there has been some programs that in the first 24 hours they received the P1 issues, like critical issues such as secular injection or authentication bypass. So it's basically depending on the company and how secure they are, but given a larger scope and many assets, there are simply bugs everywhere. Yes. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are you planning to have something like HackerOne, which has the CTF to gain private invites?
Yeah, we are actually planning to do that. And in addition to that, I wanted to mention in the slides, but we have launched a thing called Bugcrowd University, managed by Jason Haddix, the guy that I mentioned. So the Bugcrowd University is simply a website that has documents for all the vulnerability classes and types, and how to find them and exploit them. It's simply a nice community website where you can get to meet so many researchers. And there was a guy, yeah.
How is this possible? Can it be estimated a budget for starting a bug bounty program?
Like from company side, right?
Yeah, from the company side, I would like to start.
So this is more like salespeople question. I'm on engineering side, but I think I can give an answer that I think would be suitable. So I know that security budgets are very low in most of organizations, so it's hard to launch a bug bounty program. But you may just create a kudos only program, which means that you don't have to pay the researchers like cash. They'll just get points from our platform, which means that they can use the points to get private invites. So they also like hacking in kudos only programs. So basically, it doesn't have to be a paid only program, like paid by cash. But we often suggest to have a paid program because it attracts the attention of researchers.
Still, it needs some resources from the company to process the reports because there is some commitment from the company to process.
Yes, so that's why we have a dedicated ASE team, the Application Security Engineering team, which means that when a new report comes in, we have a certain SLA time to validate it. And by validate, I mean we check whether if it's in scope. We check whether if it's a valid issue, like not false positive, because there are false positives out here. And we also make sure that the issue is reproducible. And we also write clear reproduction steps so you can just verify it on your end. And then all left is to fix the bug and to give a payment. And the payment is also handled by us.
And the service is like a fixed price per month? Or
No, it's a yearly contract. But I mean, it's sales, so I don't know how they operate.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. We can have a conversation later on if you would like. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have sort of a specific question for the tools you use for when doing bug bounty programs.
Like a researcher?
No, like a
So, yeah.
or no, that's not the answer to the question. A lot of companies in these programs have a specific rule about throttling your automatic tools for one request per second. But for a lot of tools, for example, web crawlers or debugger, yeah, it's really, really slow.
Yeah, I get that.
I understand this room for like vulnerability scanners that it can provide.
They can cause noise.
Yeah, but for these tools like debugger crawlers, it's quite unreasonable to use only one request per second.
Yeah, that actually makes. So, I would suggest using a tool named Sublister, if you have noticed that. It's developed by a friend of mine who is also an active researcher. So it's really efficient in finding subdomains of a given target. So most of the programs adopt that, but we have also a thing that we support the researchers by asking them to include Bugcrowd testing in their headers. So the client would know it's a testing, so they would not rate limit the IP or like simply cancel the access from a certain IP. So that's a solution that we have found.
So you put it in every request that you send.
Sorry?
Well, if you're using the web crawler to get the structure of the whole website, put it in every
So it will be caught by the client, and they could just simply reach out to us asking whether if this IP is owned by any of your researchers. And we would just simply tell them that it's our researcher, so it's not a malicious activity. And we often don't suggest going too further with crawling and enumerating, because as you know, people tend to be really sensitive about their own assets. So it's a good idea to do the research and to make sure to not cause any disruption on the company's side, like causing any downgrade in the integrity of application or any potential like DOS, which is not suggested. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So, any other questions? Guess not. So, thank you all for listening, and if you have any questions later on, we can just hang out and I'll answer them.